Good day, everybody. I want to talk about doing everything you can before time runs out. In an interview shortly before his death, Anwar Sadat, then the president of Egypt, answered a poignant question from Barbara Walters. As the target of many assassination attempts, how could you possibly live a peaceful life, she asked. His answer was simple. He said, I will live not 1 second longer than God wants me to. That belief provided President Sadat with a great sense of serenity. Here was a man living in almost perpetual danger of an assassination, and his opponents were finally able to assassinate him on October 6, 1981. It ended a life of stunning achievements, from the Camp David Accords to the Nobel Peace Prize. Upon hearing of his death, former President Jimmy Carter said that President Sadat told him his work was completed and his contribution to world peace would continue. President Sadat was fortunate to have the blessings of time to attain many of his accomplishments, for if his death would have occurred 3 years earlier, in September of 1978, the Camp David Accords may not have been signed, the Nobel Peace Prize may not have been won, and a lasting peace between Egypt and Israel may not have been achieved. To change an organization, a country, a society, or a family, one needs the time to do so. One conversation or one book rarely has the impact to do so. More often, such change requires a concerted effort over a period of time, specifically years. Months can be accomplished, but it's usually over a period of years, for movements can't be created overnight, few are at least, and few that sustain the test of time. Regrettably, time is one luxury that is often beyond our reach. Certainly we can eat better, and alcohol and drugs can be avoided. We can exercise to remain in pristine physical shape. We can shape our attitudes and personalities so that we maintain a positive and uplifting mental disposition. But we can't prevent the unfortunate accident, the disease or plague without a cure or a natural disaster. Fate may not rest solely in our hands. Since our abilities to achieve greatness depend to a certain extent on the amount of time we have to achieve it, making the most of our time is paramount. There's a great story about Huey Long that long reinforces the importance of spending whatever time you have given on a worthwhile, admirable purpose. Huey Long was a Louisiana governor and a U.S. senator who reached the heights of his popularity during the Great Depression. Some thought he was a radical because he believed that every person had certain inalienable rights, such as an education and a decent job. He called his program Share the Wealth, and it was aimed at improving the social conditions for the most vulnerable people in the U.S. Many of his ideas remain part of today's social fabric. Social Security, student financial aid, and benefits for veterans were Huey Long's ambitions. Throughout his political career, Huey collected many enemies. He wanted to change policies and programs that benefited certain people, and some of his colleagues, even friends, were adamantly against many of his proposals. His numerous death threats over the years were, unfortunately, the price he had to pay. Finally, in 1935, the relative of a political opponent assassinated Senator Long in the state capitol. He is often best remembered for the prophetic words he uttered before he died. God, don't let me die. I have so much to do. I've always loved that line. Here was a man who found his passion light. He had overcome so many obstacles in the pursuit of greatness, and was determined to transform his country. Yet in the end, the sands in the hourglass ran empty. In my own life, I remember the death of one of my best friends more than 30 years ago, and known John Smith since we were in the 2nd grade at St. Bernard's Catholic School. After graduating high school, John enrolled at a local college, and I moved away to begin my freshman year at another university. Several weeks into his freshman year, John invited me to spend the day at his college, attend his classes, and just hang out. I'm glad I took that opportunity. I drove home to spend the day with John at his school. It was interesting to attend his classes, see how different they were than mine. We had different majors, and for lunch we walked across the college to Straw Hat Pizza, which was a local pizza parlor that had relatively famous all-you-can-eat buffets. Now they're common. We had a great time chatting about how college was different than high school, the latest girl that caught our interest, and what we hoped to do over the upcoming Christmas break. I returned home that night. 2 days later, I received the dreaded call that John, on his way home from work at the tennis and racket club, had been killed by a drunk driver. It was a devastating loss. John was, simply put, the purest person you could ever meet. He rarely drank alcohol, not once used any drugs, never strayed from his religious beliefs, and never had an unkind word to say about anyone. He worked hard, studied often, and had ambitions to contribute to the world in which he lived. But for John, His life was over shortly after it began, and his hopes and dreams were extinguished before the candle started to burn. Huey and John were special people. Huey believed in the cause of the underprivileged and spent whatever time he had to achieve those ambitions. And then there was John, who lived a life of kindness and goodness and thought that he had years ahead to perfect those two ambitions. All wanted to do something good with the time they had. Few attained greatness without the fortune of time. The obstacles of illness and ultimately death illustrates the fragile nature of life. There can be a frustrating inability to exert a great control over your destiny and your fate when it comes to these issues. The most important lesson to be learned, though, is that it is not necessarily the years in your life that matter, but what you do with the years that you have. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.